Most Venerable Shadow Dr. Ashin Nainisara, Founder Chancellor, Chicago International Buddhist Academy, Myanmar, Her Excellency Srimati Chandrika Bandaranaike, former President of Sri Lanka, Mr. Miyoru Kimichi, State Minister of Foreign Affairs, Japan, Pujya Shri Ravi Shankar ji, my minister colleague, Dr. Mahesh Sharma, Kiran Rijiju ji, General N.C. Beach, Director, Vivekananda International Foundation, Mr. Masahiro Akiyama, President, the Tokyo Foundation, Japan, Lama Lobjang, distinguished religious and spiritual leaders, venerables from the Maha Sangha and Dharma Guru. I am delighted to be here at the inauguration of Samvad, the Global Hindu Buddhist initiative on conflict avoidance and environment consciousness. This truly an esteemed gathering of spiritual leaders, scholars, and leaders from several countries of the world here, where Buddhism is a prevalent way of life. It is a matter of immense happiness that this conference is being held in India, including in Bodh Gaya. India is the ideal venue to host symposium of this nature. We in India are proud of the fact that it was from this land that Gautam Buddha gave the world the tenets of Buddhism. The life of Gautam Buddha illustrates the power of service, compassion, and most importantly, renunciation. He was born into privileges. The hardship he faced were relatively fewer. Yet, with age grew a distinct consensus about human suffering, about illness, about old age, and about death. He was convinced that material wealth is not the sole goal. Human conflicts repulse him, and then he set out on the path of create a peaceful and compassionate society. In those days, he had the courage and conviction to hold a mirror to the society and sought a break free from practices of systems seen as regressive. Gautam Buddha was a revolutionary. He nurtured a faith where human being is at the core, nothing else. The innermost being of man manifests godliness. In a way, he created a faith without God and a faith where divinity is not about looking anywhere outside, but about looking within. In 3 words, Appa Dipo Bhava, be your own light. Gautam Buddha gave humanity the greatest management lesson. Nothing pained him more than mindless conflict that caused human suffering. Non-violence was integral to his worldview. The message and teachings of Gautam Buddha resonate loudly and clearly with the major themes chosen for this symposium, the themes of avoiding conflicts, moving towards environmental consciousness, and a concept of free and frank dialogue. The three themes may appear independent, but they are not mutually exclusive. In fact, they are mutually dependent and supportive. The conflict in the first theme is among humans, religions, communities, and nation states, also between non-state actors and states and even the world. Intolerant non-state actors now control large territories where they are unleashing barbaric violence on innocent people. The second conflict is between nature and man, between nature and development, and also between nature and science. These types of conflicts call for dialogue to bring about conflict avoidance, not just give and take conflict resolution, negotiations as what is happening today. Ethical values of personal restraint in consumption and environmental consciousness are deeply rooted in Asian philosophical traditions, especially in Hinduism and Buddhism. Buddhism, along with other faiths such as Confucianism, Taoism, Shintoism, has undertaken great responsibility to protect the environment. Hinduism and Buddhism, with their well-defined treatises on Mother Earth, can help examine the changes in approach that need to be made. Climate change is a pressing global challenge. It calls for a collective human action and a comprehensive response. In India, faith and nature have had a deep link since ancient times. Buddhism and environment are deeply correlated. The Buddhist tradition, in all of its historical and cultural manifestation, encourages greater identification with the natural world because from a Buddhist perspective, nothing has a separate existence. The impurities in the environment affect the mind, and the impurities of mind also pollute the environment. In order to purify the environment, we have to purify the mind. The eco-crisis, in fact, is a reflection of imbalance of mind. Lord Buddha therefore accorded importance to the need for preserving natural resources and created tools related to water conservation and forbid the monks from polluting water resources. The nature, forests, trees, and the well-being of all beings play a great role in the teachings of Lord Buddha. I wrote a book, Convenient Action, which was released by the former President of India, Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam. In my book, I have shared my experience in dealing with climate change as the Chief Minister. Personally, it is my reading of Vedic literature that educated me about the strong bond between humans and Mother Nature. We are all aware of Mahatma Gandhi's doctrine of trusteeship. In this context, I want to say that we, the present generation, have the responsibility to act as a trustee of the rich natural wealth for the future generations. The issue is not merely about climate change. It is about climate justice. Again, I repeat, it's not the issue about the climate change. It's about climate justice. In my view, the most adversely affected by climate change are the poor and the downtrodden. When a natural disaster strikes, they are hit the hardest. When there are floods, they are rendered homeless. During an earthquake, their homes are destroyed. During droughts, they are affected, and during extreme cold, the homeless suffers the most. We can't let climate change keep affecting people in this manner, which is why I believe that this course must shift focus from climate change to climate justice. The third theme, promotion of dialogue, calls for a shift from ideological approach to a philosophic one. Without proper dialogue, neither of the two themes of conflict avoidance is possible or workable. The severe limitation in our conflict resolution mechanism are becoming more and more obvious. We need significant collective and strategic effort to prevent bloodshed and violence. It is thus no surprise that the world is taking note of Buddhism. This is also a recognition of the historical Asian traditions and values which can be used to shift the paradigm to conflict avoidance, to move from the path of ideology to philosophy. The essence of the entire concept of this conference, including the first two themes, conflict avoidance and environmental consciousness, is contained in the dialogue part of it, which calls for a shift from the them versus us ideological approach to philosophic approach. It is necessary to inform the world about the need to shift from ideology to philosophy. When I spoke at the United Nations last year, I briefly mentioned that the world needs to shift from ideological approach to philosophic approach. A day later, when I addressed the Council for Foreign Relations, I expanded on this concept a little more. The essence of philosophy is that it is not a closed thought, while ideology is a closed one. So philosophy not only allows dialogue, but it is perpetual search of truth through dialogue. The entire Upanishad literature is a compilation of dialogue. Ideologies which close the gates for dialogue have the propensity for violence, while philosophy seeks to avoid it through dialogue. Thus, Hindu and Buddhist religions are in the sense more philosophies and not just belief system. It is my firm belief that the solution to the problem lies in dialogue. Earlier, it was believed that force indicates power. Now, power must come through the strength of ideas and the effective dialogue. We have seen the adverse effect of war. The first half of the 20th century was witness to the horror of two world wars. Now, nature of warfare is changing and the changes are increasing. What took 100,000 men or prolonged battle can now happen through the click of a button in a span of minutes. All of us here have a cardinal duty to ensure that our future generations lead a life of peace, dignity, and mutual respect. We need to show the seeds of a conflict-free world, and in this endeavor, faiths of Buddhism and Hinduism have a great contribution. When we talk about dialogue, what kind of dialogue should it be? It is dialogue which produces no anger or retribution. One of the greatest examples of such dialogue was the one between Adi Shankar and Mandan Mishra. It is worth recalling and describing this ancient example for our modern times. Adi Shankar, a Vedantic, who did not give high marks for rituals, was a young man, while Mandan Mishra was an elderly scholar and high ritualist who believed in animal sacrifice also. Adi Shankar wanted to establish through dialogue and debate with the highest authority on ritualism, and that rituals were not necessary for attaining mukti, while Mandan Mishra wanted to prove that Shankar was wrong in dismissing rituals. This was how, in ancient India, debates on sensitive issues between scholars avoided such issues being settled in streets. Adi Shankar and Mandan Mishra held a debate, and Shankar won. But the more important point is not the debate itself, but how was the debate conducted. It is a fascinating story that will remain one of the highest forms of debate for all times for humanity. It was agreed that if Mandan Mishra lost, he would cease to be householder, Grostha Dharma, and accept sannyas. If Adi Shankar lost, he would give up his sannyas and marry and settle down householder, Grastha life. Mandan Mishra, a high scholar, offered to Adi Shankar, who was young, and therefore Mishra considered unequal to choose a referee of his choice. Adi Shankar chose Mandan Mishra's wife, a scholar herself, as the referee. If Mandan Mishra lost, she would lose her husband. But see what she did. She asked both Shankar and Mandan Mishra to wear fresh garlands and then begin the debate, and said that the one whose garland loses its freshness would be declared as the loser. Why? Because if one gets angry, the body will develop heat, and as a result, the garland flowers will lose their freshness in that heat. Anger within is a sign of defeat. On this logic, Mandan Mishra was declared as having lost the debate, and he accepted sannyas and became disciple of Shankar. This demonstrates the vitality of dialogue, and that too, dialogue without anger and conflict. Today, in this August gathering, we are people of different nationalities, with different lifestyles, but what binds us is the fact that the roots of our civilization are even shared philosophies, history, and heritage. Buddhism and Buddhist heritage have been a uniting and binding factor. They say that This century is going to be an Asian century. I'm very clear that without embracing the path of ideals shown by Gautam Buddha, this century cannot be the Asian century. I see Lord Buddha doing to our collective spiritual well-being what global trade did to our collective economic well-being, and the digital internet did to our collective intellectual well-being. I see Lord Buddha in the 21st century across national borders, across faith systems, across political ideologies, playing the role of bridge to promote understanding, to counsel patience, and to enlighten us with tolerance and empathy. You are visiting a nation that is extremely proud of its Buddhist heritage. My hometown, Vadnagar in Gujarat, was one of the places visited by a Chinese traveler and chronicler Sven Zhang. The Sark region is home to the holy sites of Buddhism. Lumbini, Bodh Gaya, Sarnath, Krishinagar. These sites draw pilgrims from ASEAN nations as also from China, Korea, Japan, Mongolia and Russia. My government is doing everything possible to give an impetus to the Buddhist heritage across India, and India is taking the lead in boosting the Buddhist heritage across Asia. This 3-day meet is one such effort. I hope the next 3 days are full of vibrant and rich discussions, and we are able to sit together and think about the way ahead towards peace, conflict resolution, and a clean and green world. I look forward to seeing you in Bodh Gaya the day after. Thank you very much. Thank you.